Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. As promised, I have my friend and guest Lee Carroll here with me today, and we're going to talk all things mushrooms. Lee, welcome to the
Hi,
show.
hi, Rhonda. Thanks
Hi.
for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Lee and I have been friends for a long, long time. And so it's so nice to be able to reconnect with him in this venue. And for the last couple years, Lee, you have spent diving into the world of mushrooms. Yeah.
I have, yeah, I've been in my little cave for probably 3 years,
No wonder I
developing,
haven't talked to you in a long time.
yeah,
Yeah.
developing and creating all the content. Yeah,
So, yeah, you have a brand new course out all about mushrooms, and we'll talk about more about that towards the end of the show. But before we came on air, Lee and I were chatting about all the things we wanted to talk about, and I decided that what I wanted to do was learn more from Lee about his deep dive into mushrooms, kind of going back to the very beginning. So, Lee, if you would share with the audience and the listeners what we just talked about where are the historical footprints of mushrooms, so to speak, in our ancestry, that paleo type perspective, and then bring us forward to today? Because right
yeah,
now, today, there's a big, big push for mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, all the things. So let's start in the
yeah,
beginning and then work our way towards up to the modern patient.
yeah. It's a fascinating question, and it's a really interesting area of study, Rhonda. There's a lot of mycophobia that flows through the western part of the world. The eastern part of the world has always fully embraced mushrooms and used them as part of their cuisine and medicine going back ages, like 5,000 years. There's
Yeah.
really good recorded history. So in the West, we've been a bit mycophobic. I think there's a number of reasons around that. There's a few mushrooms that can kill you, but I think people in the past were a bit scared of the whole psychedelic thing, and you don't want people
Right.
like having too much of an enlightened view of the world because it disrupts the the
Yeah.
control that
Yeah.
governments have,
Yeah.
etc. So I was really curious about when's the evidence of the first kind of human use of mushrooms. So there's a few archaeological papers that have studied this, and the researchers scrape teeth from archaeological specimens, and then under a microscope they look at food fragments, and they also now have DNA techniques where they can analyze some of the DNA. And the earliest evidence of human consumption of mushrooms is 48,000 years old.
What?
Neanderthals living in caves in Belgium and Spain. And the Rhizoph and Coprinopsis and the porcini and the agaricus, these are all mushrooms that ancient humans ate, and there's still ones that get used today as food and medicine. Shizum
Wow.
commune is called the split gill, and that has the honor of being the first one that was identified as being consumed by these people 48,000 years ago, and it's a food and a medicine today. And then as you go through time, there's more and more specimens that get found, more that are more recent. So in the period between 12,000 and 16,000 years ago, there's evidence that people in Spain again who are much more developed, uh,
Right.
that's like the end of the ice age,
Yeah.
were eating huge amounts of boletes, so the porcini, which is kind of the signature mushroom of the Italian cuisine, but also just all of the different types of agaricus, which are the button, portobello, and crimini family that we consume today. So
Okay.
some
So,
researchers also looked at the carbon and the nitrogen signatures that mushrooms deliver, and because researchers have developed ideas around how much meat was consumed by looking at the carbon and nitrogen isotopes in collagen of these ancient specimens. And nitrogen and carbon those isotopes are delivered by mushrooms as well. So the researchers looked into that, said that the reporting of mushroom consumption in the past for early humans and Neanderthals is underreported and under
oh,
investigated. So
hmm.
all of the Paleolithic diet stuff that there's a whole industry around writing books on
Right.
that
Right.
and
Right.
diets. It has just excluded mushrooms arbitrarily without really considering what the real human history is. So, and then humans are designed to consume mushrooms. So there's really good evidence for humans to actually need to eat them. It's not just that they deliver nutrients, they deliver the macronutrients. There's micronutrients and clinically relevant stuff that mushrooms deliver that keep humans healthy. and where modern humans are less healthy because of an underconsumption of mushrooms.
So, can I ask a question about the going back to the paleo diet? So we all know what this paleo diet is, but
Yeah.
if you believe, how would the paleo diet be differently or correctly, I should say, represented through the lens of mushroom consumption during that period of time? What would that look like today? Instead of the paleo diet we know, what, in your opinion, should it look like or would it look like today?
Yeah, well, the modern interpretation of it would be consuming at least 3 meals a week of mushrooms where they're the main thing on the plate. So you don't eat the meat, but you have the similar kind of quantity of grilled or fried mushrooms or oven baked or however you want to do it, or boiled. So there's depending on the mushroom, there's different levels of benefit that you get, and a serving size is different for everybody. There's research studies that you take a serving of meat out of your diet in a week and replace it with just button mushrooms, and you live longer. You have less diabetes, you have less cancer. It's quite profound.
So for us, the mushrooms that we, at least here in the US, you're in Australia, but in the US, the mushrooms we have available to us are the portobello, the button mushrooms. We've got some shiitake mushrooms you can get. Every once in a while, you get some random variety that'll show up at the grocery store. So if that's all someone that had available to them, would that be appropriate, or do we need to be going looking
Yeah,
for those mushrooms somewhere else?
they're perfect. The
Okay,
humble crimini and portobello do a really good job. They don't do the whole job, but they do a really good job.
good to
And
know.
there's a lot of faddishness around the exotic nature of all the mushrooms you can
Mm-hmm.
grow, and
Mm-hmm.
I love that. But it not everybody has the budget to like spend the money on buying a more exotic type mushroom. You can grow
Right,
them yourself for sure, but not everybody's interested in doing that. So
right, right.
it doesn't matter what the mushroom is. And if you, of those ones you just mentioned, shiitake is probably the most important edible and possibly the cream of the crop in terms of medicinal mushrooms. So eating that one on a regular basis delivers significant immunological advantages over the asparagus or the crimini or the
Yeah.
button mushroom. But
What about the amino acid profile? I can hear somebody saying, yeah, well, but if I pulled meat out of my diet, then I'm not going to have all the amino acids. And so you're talking about doing that replacement from a nutritional standpoint, but is there any compromise to the overall diet, blood sugar, that kind of thing, by just having mushrooms be that kind of central piece of the meal?
yeah, well, it is always a challenge because it's easy to take something away from a conversation that isn't actually said. So I'm
Yeah.
not advocating for people to replace all of their meat with mushrooms, but a couple of meat meals a week is quite a healthy thing to do. The
Yeah.
modern human probably
Yeah.
eats a bit too much meat, and there's a
Yeah.
whole discussion there.
Yeah.
But the amino acid profile of mushrooms is not as good as meat, but it's pretty impressive. I think there's a slightly different balance of the expression of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no downside to including more mushrooms in your diet and taking a bit of the meat out.
Yeah, even if you were to like balance that out, instead of eating your normal serving of chicken or beef or whatever that animal protein was, by just even you could cut that meat in half, the meat serving in half, just reduce it and then increase the amount of mushrooms on your
Yeah.
plate. But good to
And
know
the
about the shiitake. I love that.
Yeah, and the thing to focus on is just increasing the bulk of the mushroom consumption, because when people eat mushrooms, it's used as like a garnish
Yeah.
or a little
Yeah.
bit of a side on the plate, but
Yeah.
we need to be thinking about eating them in higher quantities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's the correlation with like whatever the main dish is, the main food that you're eating in
Yeah.
your meal. If you talked about looking at the amount of mushrooms, let that mushrooms be the staple of the meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, by
And
size or volume.
it's a difficult topic because many people don't even cook their own meals anymore. So
Yeah.
if you're only cooking 2 or 3 meals at home a week, then adding mushrooms in is going to be like maybe a bit challenging.
Yeah.
So that's where supplements and mushroom teas and things come in, so that you can still get the benefit without all of the cooking. Yeah.
Is there a benefit one way or the other to cooking versus raw?
Mushrooms need to be cooked. Yeah, they shouldn't be eaten raw. Some portobellos and things grow in cow manure, so you need to be careful about what comes on for the ride with the mushroom.
Yeah.
And the active constituents in mushrooms, the beta glucans are the
Right.
prebiotics and immunological activating, and they need to be cooked for a couple of hours to get the full benefits when you're doing a commercial extraction. And some of the more highly specific nutrients from mushrooms like ergothioneine are very heat stable, so cooking doesn't damage them. So yeah, not an advocate of raw mushroom consumption.
So then from a practical standpoint, as Lee talking to a patient about this, we're all learning here, listening as practitioners or providers, but talking to a patient about this, I'm envisioning being able to say, throw some mushrooms in a crock pot, turn that thing on low and let it sit there. Let it go.
Yeah, with some vegetables,
Yeah.
with a bit of chicken, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's easy and it's incredibly tasty. Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
nutritious. So, all
and
right. So
nutritious. Yeah, at
here
a
we are.
very very deep level.
Yeah. So here we are at the modern, kind of the modern world and how that looks here. So why would we want to, I mean, obviously from a nutritional perspective, but it feels a bit overwhelming to me to know kind of where to start with this. I can talk to the patients about eating the mushrooms that are in the grocery store. Just get the organic mushrooms where you can, cook them up. That I think I can handle. But clinically, we have to have, there's going to be people who would just say, I hate mushrooms. I won't eat them
Yeah,
and I don't like
yeah,
them. So then we have to
they
be
do
able,
exist. Yeah,
yeah, then we have to be able to supplement that and bring that conversation full circle into a practice where we're not only just giving information, but then we're driving the revenue of the practice as well.
yeah, yeah.
So what are your suggestions about, like, I think why, this is probably the better question. Why would we as clinicians need to know more about mushrooms right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's quite a few reasons. Number one is that mushrooms are really in the consciousness of the public's. They're right there. So the patients are primed for a mushroom conversation because they're seeing it on social media. They're hearing about it everywhere they go. So being current as a practitioner is really important. And I think, as a group of practitioners, particularly the world that we inhabit and the influences that have shaped how we think clinically, mushrooms have been notably absent from that discussion. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that, but we need to address the imbalance. And humans need mushrooms to be healthy, and mushrooms form the food and the medicine. So from a medicinal point of view, as a practitioner, we really need to get on board and appreciate just what a mushroom has to offer. And then when we're good in clinic, we're more successful. We have happier patients, and we make more money.
Right.
So getting on board with mushrooms now is a really ideal time for the practitioner to capitalize on that wave of
Like a wave.
interest, the
Exactly.
wave of interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where my education programs come in. There's been a real dearth of quality information to support the use of mushrooms. There's been lots of really good information, but not bringing it together and creating like a solid body of work that would allow someone to say, oh my God, I had no idea that mushrooms have all of this to offer.
Right. So tell me a little bit about your course.
So my course, I've just launched it. My website's Herba Meditari. Oh, I've got to point this way.
Yeah, wherever that is. Yeah.
Herbitari.com.au. And the course it's on demand. It's fully self-paced. There's 8 modules that take you through everything that you need to know about what makes mushrooms medicinal, so that you can understand what it is about a mushroom that is going to make it work. There's a module on quality. There's a module at the beginning that sets the scene for why mushrooms, what's the importance of them. And then at the end, there's a module that I cover 10 mushrooms, and it's supported with 50,000 words of written material for those that like to read. There wasn't a textbook to use, so I had to kind of write my own.
Nice work.
There's 10 monographs to support each of the mushrooms that I talk about. So there's 14 hours of online material. There's 87 videos. And wow. I've designed a course that would suit beginners and for people that have got a more advanced understanding. And the way that I've managed that within the program is that I used to do just very long videos. So there'd be like an 8-hour course and there'd be 4 2-hour videos. That's that's just not user friendly anymore. So I've got 87 videos in those 14 hours. So the average video length is only 10 minutes long. And
Which makes it so nice. To consume it is so much better.
yeah, and I've rated them all as essential, recommended, and optional. So the practitioner knows that I really do need to do the essential ones, and recommended means that I only have to do it if I'm interested, and optional means it's either nerdy or it's a topic that you might not want to practice in. Like if I'm talking about mushrooms benefits in preeclampsia, if you don't ever see a pregnant patient, then you don't need to do that
Right.
particular module.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll link in the show notes to your course for anyone who's interested, and I highly recommend it. I actually purchased the course myself and
Thank you.
you're welcome. I'm happy to support you. And I think this is where for me, the exchange, the dollar exchange is the value is that, I mean, you've put in thousands of hours
Yeah.
researching and
Yeah.
learning and writing, and I don't have time to do that. So I'm so happy to give you my money in exchange for your condensed knowledge that's going to save me time. And ultimately, it's going to help me help the patients. And I'm going to be able to build a better footprint for my own clinical practice by being able to be well versed, educated, knowledgeable about this new wave, we called it, of mushroom awareness. And I think I couldn't
Yeah.
recommend high enough your course, A, and then B, that practitioners really take this seriously. I think this is for those practitioners who don't take this seriously, don't become educated, learn how to use mushrooms in their clinic. For the practitioner who does, they're probably going to race out a little bit ahead of you. And I don't want you to get left behind. So highly,
Yeah.
highly recommend diving in.
And I've got a track record in allowing practitioners to understand a topic. And my focus has always been on herbal medicine. And practitioners that have taken my previous herbal medicine courses,
Yeah.
they've been much more successful in business. They've had better outcomes, and their sales have improved. Their net income's significantly gone up. So it's not just academically understanding something, it's honing your skill and being better at what you do. And that doesn't mean just, oh, this mushroom does this thing and I give it in this dose in this situation. It's also the language that you use around the patient consult. So being able to explain to the patient why mushrooms are important, having the stories to tell, having the language, having the insights to deliver is a really big part of being successful in that in a new category. So that's a big part of what you get as well.
Yeah, and when you have the ability to resolve issues, health issues for someone, and do that in a way that is cost effective, you're going to end up reaping that benefit way long term because the patients are happier. They don't end up feeling like they're spending $500, $600, $700 a month on herbs and supplements when you might be able to just recommend one or two mushrooms at a much lower cost, get them the same, maybe a better benefit depending on the situation. And that always comes back. Oh, so much more. The referrals are better, et cetera. So from a business standpoint, it's a way, way, way better option.
Yeah. And I'm not giving up on my herbal medicine credentials. I just realized that mushrooms needed to be dealt with properly and people needed access to good quality material. So this first part's all about mushrooms, but the second part of what I'm going to do is integrating mushrooms into clinical practice. So how do mushrooms fit into the existing herbal programs? And mushrooms are not going to replace herbs. It's not either or choice. It's about how do you sensitively integrate them. And there's so much interest there. And my ability to help patients in clinic now has improved incredibly with this new knowledge.
And you're seeing results, better results, faster results, different results? How would you quantify that?
Over time, mushrooms build much more resilience into a patient's health. So they're less sick. If they do get sick, they're not as sick, and the frequency, everything around that long-term resilience improves. And in the categories where mushrooms are strong, and mushrooms can't resolve everything, but in the categories where mushrooms are strong, things tend to happen a lot faster. So it's hard to try and encapsulate that in a short period
Yeah.
of time. But with my
Yeah.
autoimmune patients, for example, I have a bunch of patients with lichen sclerosis, for example. I got a patient with psoriatic arthritis, and they've improved much more significantly with the addition of the mushrooms than in the previous period of my practitioner life where I wasn't using mushrooms. So faster results and more profound results. The
Wow.
couple of lichen sclerosis patients I've got, they they've their conditions kind of effectively in remission.
Wow.
Yeah,
Just,
which
and
is
that's a tough, that's a challenging one.
it's a tough one. Yeah,
Definitely
yeah.
challenging one.
And
Just
I've
recorded a
always had some of
podcast
those
about it.
patients. So
Yeah.
I've had 20 years of experience in dealing with that, and it's challenging. So the use of tremella, notably, is a mushroom that I've been
Yeah.
using, which has made a big difference.
Well, this is a good spot to end this part 1 episode, because our next episode, the next podcast that you guys will all get next week, so stand by, but our next episode is going to be about Lee's top 5 picks of mushrooms. And we're going to talk about the counterfeits and the counterfeit information that may be out on the market that you need to know before you go out and just start buying up a bunch of mushrooms. So we are going to dive into that. And I'm sure that just in the general conversation, we'll probably have some more things that'll come up. And I don't know what those are, but those are the 2 things I do know we're going to talk about next week on the podcast. So before we sign off, Lee, is there anything that you want to say before we're going to hit the pause button literally and keep
Oh,
this conversation going? But to wrap this one up, is there anything else you want to
oh.
add?
No, just it's great to be interacting with you again. It's been so many years,
I
and I'm
know.
just really excited to be sharing this mushroom information. Practitioners really need to know about it.
Well, I can't wait. And so we're going to hit the pause button for all of y'all. See you next week. But I'm going to hit the pause button. Lee and I are going to continue this conversation. You'll get to listen to it in a few days. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye bye.